friends, and welcome to another episode of Manufacturing Transform Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Van Meter, and today we just got off the recording with Ben Dunn from Blueprint Advanced Manufacturing, a very cool company near Denver, Colorado. And Ben bought this business about 3 years ago or so, I believe, and he was not at all from the machining industry. In fact, when he was looking at this business, it used to be called A&L, walking through was the very first time he'd ever stepped foot in a machine shop. He was a hands-on guy. He had done woodworking, as a kid, as a teenager in his past, but he was brand new to the machining industry. And his experience with hospitals and with running a tree service company and doing other things in his past set him up really well, I think, for running this precision machining company. And some of the concepts he brings to the team and to lean manufacturing and to building systems and to be very methodical in the planning of the company, promoting people into leadership and having backup plans for everything, I think is a real good model for how a successful business can be run. And clearly the success they're having bears that out, that it's working well. So we get into lots of really fun topics, but we won't get all into it. I'll just let him tell you himself. So let's go meet and talk with Ben Dunn from Blueprint Advanced Manufacturing. Ben, welcome to the Manufacturing Transform Podcast. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you. And go into a library because you don't have an office that you can close a door at your shop.
Yeah.
So yeah, you put in some time. So thank you.
No problem.
Let's start by talking about your personal background and how you ended up buying the shop that is now Blueprint Advanced Manufacturing.
Sure. So this is a 6-hour podcast, right?
That's right.
Plenty of time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We can stretch to 7 or 8 if we want to.
All right. I'll try to be as abridged as possible. It's always hard to answer that question. I had kind of a circuitous path to where I am now. So I'll kind of try to give you an overall version of what that looks like. So, growing up as a kid, I'll start there briefly. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit in me. I always, in some way, shape, or form, dreamed of leading a team, owning a company, something along those lines. I remember as a youngster, I was had a lemonade stand. I kind of started there, and then I noticed that in the neighborhood, there was more traffic in the mornings where people were coming or going to work. And so I shifted from lemonade to coffee and bagels, hired some kids from the neighborhood to help out, and kind of went from there and expanded that business even at a young age. And so that was a lot of fun. And I had a bunch of other jobs along the way, waited tables, worked at a retail store, worked for a tree service for a long time. Actually, when I was in high school, I always liked building things, creating things, mostly with wood. And so I was looking for a carpentry apprenticeship in high school and would, check the classified ads. And at the time, we were still checking the newspaper for things like that. Months and months went by. Couldn't find a carpentry apprenticeship, but this tree service job showed up. So I joined a tree service and kind of rose to the ranks and ended up running a crew for many years, and love that. Hardest physical work I've ever done, and got my first opportunity to formally lead a team and drive results, and I love doing that. Kind of at the same time, I was going through high school. I love the outdoors, which is part of the reason my wife and I moved to Colorado. We both love hiking and camping and mountain biking and all those things, and I was the president of our Explorers Club in high school, and we would go on these trips, and we went rock climbing and things like that. And I remember asking the question, like, if somebody gets hurt here, what do we do? And nobody knew how to take care of anybody. And so I said, okay, well, I guess I'll take an EMT class so I can at least take care of people if somebody falls from a rock or otherwise. And so I took an EMT class at the same time, and loved it, and started volunteering for a local ambulance company just on the side. And again, continued to love what I was doing. Worked with some paramedics who were doing way cooler stuff than I was, seemingly, as an EMT. And so ended up going back to paramedic school. And at the time, the chief of my volunteer department, who was also a police officer, said, great, go do that, but also get your bachelor's degree. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about it. I was thinking about joining a fire department, and I wasn't necessarily considering, getting my degree, but he said, definitely do that. So, he was a mentor at the time, and I just said, yes, sir, I will do that. And so I ended up getting my bachelor's in emergency health services, which you end up with a paramedic certification. Did that in Maryland, and started working full time as a paramedic there before moving to Colorado with my wife, and worked out here as a paramedic all in all about 15 years, and started having kids along the way, and ended up moving into hospital administration. I was offered a position in the emergency room by one of the hospitals I transported patients to, and started there, and then moved on to overseeing a couple departments in the hospital, and had several jobs in the hospital and hospital system here in Denver, and some leadership positions. Worked in operations and some strategy, business development, community relations, outreach, along those lines. And so, kind of during that journey, I kind of had time to reflect on what I enjoyed and what I wanted to do, and kind of in the beginning of 2022, I was called back to the entrepreneurial side of me that had kind of been pushed to the wayside for a while. Oh, and I guess along the way, I got my MBA in the process too. Not necessarily sure what I was going to do with it per se, but wanted to learn more formally about business and how to run it well. So I ended up getting a master's and an MBA with a concentration in finance during my time with the hospital system.
Super cool.
And just kind of a quick foreshadowing before I continue that forward, I read a book, and it ended up being the first book we read. My Blueprint Advanced Manufacturing has a book club, so voluntary book club that people can participate in. And the first book we read actually really helped elucidate for me the difference between a job, a career, and a calling. So a job is a position. You could be a lawyer, you could be a machinist, you could be a bartender, and that's a job. And a career, you could have a career in manufacturing, you could have a career in hospital administration, whatever it may be. But your calling is something different, kind of transcends your career, transcends your job, and it's really what you're doing to serve your community, serve the world, serve your team, serve your family, what you do well, kind of the essence of what you bring while you're here on this earth. And during this journey and leading up until now, I never was able to really articulate it the way that this book did, and it was really helpful for me. And I found, reflecting back on all the different jobs and opportunities I've had in my life, that what I really love doing and feel like now that I'm called to do is that leadership role, to create a space where people can thrive in their work every day, and provide some direction for the team or the company. So we're all rowing in the same direction, and remove barriers and seeing the team fit together, putting all the pieces together so that a team can be successful and drive results. I've always been result oriented. I've always been very driven. I can't sit still. I go on vacation and I'm fixing things for the Airbnb host, and my wife makes fun of me all the time. I can't sit still. It seems like every time I go on vacation, I'm fixing something. So yeah, that kind of a verbose, long-winded way of saying, I finally found what I love doing, and just the fact that I did have experiences in different industries doesn't take away the fact that I feel like I've identified my calling and what I really love to do and what I'm called to do, I think, while I'm here on this earth. And so, yeah, I in 2022, again, for a lot of different reasons that would probably, take longer than this podcast to fully explain, I ended up starting to look for a business to acquire. And I'd done a lot of research about this leading up to this point. And of course, I have 3 kids and a wife, and I want to be able to take care of my family too. And so, starting from scratch and building a business from scratch was not something I wanted to take on at that point in my life. So I'd done a lot of research about the acquisition piece, and I ended up finding A&L Machining at the time, now Blueprint Advanced Manufacturing, and I did work with a broker to help guide me through the process. And he said, I think a private equity is going to probably scoop this thing up. I don't think you're going to get it, but if you want to try for it, let's do it. But we got to move on it now. And so I remember walking through the facility and feeling how special it was. Not really knowing until I took over how special it truly was, but just I felt it, and I said, this is it. It was a business that I felt like I could get behind. I've always strongly believed in American manufacturing. I love a good product. I hate our wasteful throwaway society. It's always very much irritated me. I still have a Patagonia jacket from 20 years ago. My first, I worked at a kayak center as well along the way. I was a whitewater kayaker for a while, and so I got a pro deal on a Patagonia jacket, and I still have it to this day, and it still holds up and does a great job. And so I walked through this, and I could through the facility, and I could just tell. I mean, they took a lot of pride in what they did, made high quality products, and I said, this is it, and it ended up coming to fruition. So that's kind of a
Wow.
hopefully that didn't take up too much time. I could go on a lot longer, but
That was awesome. Yeah, it's fascinating that experiences in such different industries can all be just super relevant to what you're doing now and sort of culminate in you coming to this spot. So was that the first time you'd ever been in a machine shop when you walked through looking at A&L?
yeah, it had. I mean, I like I said, did a lot of woodworking and built things as a kid, but mostly with wood,
Yep.
and I'd never produced anything, with metal before. So that was my
Right.
first opportunity to see that in action.
Cool. Well, you're a braver man than most. And I totally feel you on a couple of those points you made. I totally fix things wherever I go.
Yeah.
I'm like, fixing drawers, cabinets, putting knobs back on, whatever it is. I should travel with a little toolbox. But and then I don't have it still to this day, but for probably close to 25 years, I had a Patagonia jacket that I got when I was a teenager.
Yep.
It was like bright aqua with like orange and pink. It was definitely
Yeah.
a 90s thing, but yeah, incredible products and totally resonate with, a durable product that can last for a long, long time. That's
Yep.
worth investing your time into.
Yep. And Patagonia also has just a great culture and a great mission, and I love
Yeah.
what they're doing as a company, which is something that I strive for every day at Blueprint. Is we're more than just a machine shop in my mind. We're trying to find value and impact, and that's really what I'm thinking about a lot recently. Is how are we having value? How are we adding value? And how are we creating impact? And that's not just for our customers. Obviously, that's very important, but
Mhm.
also for our employees and for our community and the industry as a whole. So I'm always trying to think through and make sure that the moves that we're making are adding value and creating impact in all those areas.
Mhm. Yeah, and I really do love that distinction between a job, a career, and a calling. I mean, I can imagine the people that love what they do the most are working in their calling,
Yeah.
right? If you're not, it's going to be hard to show up every day and be happy about it.
So I got a question for you because this
Sure.
came up when we did this book club. When you look back on all the jobs that you've had in your life, how many or what percentage of them would you say you really liked or appreciated? Or I guess what percentage did you not? What percentage of those did you not like or not appreciate?
Yeah. Well, I have had relatively few jobs since I started Pro CNC right out of college. So prior to that, of course, delivering pizza or working at a restaurant or a few other jobs. But yeah, I didn't really love those. I did really love Pro CNC. It was really fun to make things and be a part of building something. But my job today is 1,000% my calling. Like
Yeah.
even more than making precision parts, it's helping, small manufacturing companies, small medium companies like yours do better, have more success, provide a tool that you can use to grow and, serve your mission. So yeah, it is that totally resonates. And I hadn't thought about it with the same kind of clarity as clearly that book
Yeah.
brought for you.
Yeah, and they pointed out that 70% of people, I think it's 70%, they said that didn't that hated or disliked their job. And
Yeah.
what I when I we answered the question as a group, and I do think this isn't a mistake, this isn't arbitrary, but I have loved or appreciated every job I've ever had, except for one. It was a way back in the day. I was stocking shelves in a hospital, and it lasted one day. But everything else, I've really enjoyed and really appreciated, and not I'm finding, I didn't realize I was unique in that way, and I think there's something about my mind and my heart that's created that outlook. And I think that has dovetailed into doing what I do now. I can appreciate every aspect of the business and the role that everybody in the business has and how that all comes together. And everybody's important. I know that sounds cliche, but I'm able to kind of appreciate all the jobs, all the positions, all the things that need to get done in the company. I think because of that opportunity to have I would say a positive outlook on
Hmm.
every job I've been fortunate enough to have over the years.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's a great attitude. So, just so to give folks a little bit of context, tell us about Blueprint. What size, what you specialize in, kind of machines. What does it look like today?
Sure. Yeah. So the company has been around in some way, shape, or form since 1969. I'm the third owner of the company. I took over from the previous owners who had worked there, I think, for 35 years total. They worked there under the first owner and then ended up taking over the company when the original owner retired. And then I took over from them. We are we're in Denver, 12,500 square foot building currently. We have 21 full time employees, and we have one intern and one part time employee. And we specialize in industrial and commercial space. We are an ISO 9001 shop and are pursuing AS 9100 this year. But
Cool.
currently, we are industrial, commercial, oil and gas, some gun parts, things like that, and really are a production shop. So we toured another production shop out in California last week, or earlier this week, actually.
Yeah.
And with Pro Shop, and it really reminded me of Blueprint, but just a little bit larger than we are. So we tend to have production runs. We do run 10, 15, 20 parts, but our sweet spot is more hundreds to thousands in a production run, and we have some parts that are we produce tens of thousands of a year. So, depending on your perspective, I guess that's, medium production
Hmm.
size. We do have a lot of lathes, more than a lot of shops out there. We have 11 lathes and 9 mills. And our largest diameter lathe is 15-inch. And so a couple weeks ago, we ran a 430-pound stainless steel slug,
Wow.
12 parts of that. So
Uh-huh. It's a lot
you
of
know, we
chips.
it is it's a lot. It's a lot of chips, yeah. And so we run stuff anywhere from a quarter inch in diameter up to we do go a little bit bigger than that on the mills, but that's our largest lathe part that we run. Yeah, so production,
Cool.
again, production. We tend to not do the one-offs, short turnaround type work, and stainless steel, and some exotic metals as well.
Right on. So, I'd love for you to paint the picture of kind of how you guys were managing things when you decided you needed to do something different. I know when I visited and we did a video of your shop, which we should recommend people watch, you had this crazy old blue screen, antiquated little one computer system.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us just what was going on that you decided you needed something different.
So I knew we needed Pro Shop before I even took over. I know it was Pro Shop yet, but I knew I needed it. So I actually started. So when I started getting more serious, and it seemed like things were going to during the underwriting process, and when we were confident that things were going to move forward, I was researching ERPs beforehand, and I had narrowed it down. So I started with there was there's thousands out there, and I narrowed it down to 10 or 20, and then I narrowed it down to Pro Shop, Globo Shop, and I think Job Bossery too
Yep.
at the time.
Yep.
And there was a couple other ones I looked at more seriously too, but ultimately that's kind of the three we ended with. And then when I took over, I brought in some key members of the team to review those with me. So I had it wasn't just me making the decision; it was our leadership team at the time and our quasi leadership team, which I'll tell you a little bit about. But
Okay.
so yeah, we landed on Pro Shop, and it was a pretty easy choice at that point. After after I had narrowed down all those other options out there. So how did how was it run before, you ask? So very, very interesting. I've never seen anything quite like it before, but now that I'm starting to or as I've been touring and visiting
Hmm.
other shops throughout the country over the past few years, I'm seeing it's much more common than I never thought it would be. But it was the previous owners, a couple that ran the shop, and it was very much them running the show and kind of telling everybody else what needs to get done. There wasn't a lot of understanding from others about, the business operations and the why behind some of the decision making. So the wife ran the office, and the husband, ran the shop floor. He was a brilliant machinist, a great job developing automation over the years. And the system that was in place was basically pad and paper, a DOS-based computer, and a dot matrix printer. And I mean, there was stacks of paper and filing cabinets just everywhere in the office. And I say that I don't mean to be disparaging, but it was remarkable because she knew where everything was. I would say, hey, where is this document? And she would say 4 inches down in that stack over there, and it was there.
That's incredible.
I mean, she knew where everything was, but obviously that's difficult for anybody else. It's not scalable. So I brought in. I knew we needed an ERP fast to know where we were winning or losing. There was no schedule per se. They would get a purchase order. They would build out a job packet and a couple other paperwork documentation, and then they would put the packet in a stack of plastic compartments that had the machine on it. And then when somebody was done with one, they'd come in and grab the packet on the top for that machine, and that's the next thing they worked on. But I mean,
got it.
No schedule. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, whichever one is on top, that's the schedule, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wild. Yeah. Before we get to the next question, let's talk about your quasi leadership team.
Yeah. So again, this is a pretty standard way for smaller shops to be run. I'm finding, it's the owner or the couple and maybe one other person who is part of the leadership team. And early on, I established a leadership team. So we have our senior leadership team, and then we have our next layer of department leads. And just creating a structure again that's sustainable, that is scalable, and that creates some organization and structure to the company. Again, it's nothing profound. It's pretty standard to have that in a business, as you're well aware. So.
And did you choose those folks based on the roles they were already in, or based on potential you saw in them? And did you shift some things around, or how did you do that?
There weren't really any defined roles. So, but I'm very, very fortunate for the team. And that's, I think, one of the things that makes the company special is that, so when I took over, there were 14 employees. So that, 14 employees and historical par levels have been about 21 to 25 employees the previous 4 years. So we were down 10 when I took over, because they did share with everybody that they were going to sell the business for about a year and a half. And I think as happens, people don't know what's going to happen, and you get attrition through that.
Yeah.
So, but the 14 who were there when I took over are still there today. And many of which have been there we just celebrated last year 2 20-year anniversaries and a 30-year anniversary. We got a 40-year anniversary this year, and then there's 15, 13, 11, and it goes down from there. And obviously we've hired some new employees too. So
some great tenure. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I took, several weeks to, get situated, or several months to get situated and feel everything out and identify, who might be good for a leadership position within the company, and went from there. And people, I presented the opportunities, and several people stepped up and offered to take on those roles, and very happy, very, very, very fortunate with the team that I was blessed with when I came in.
That's super cool. So you didn't have a ton of tenure using the dot matrix printer system before you made the switch, but yeah, can you just tell us about that transition? Obviously, some of the folks on the team have been there much longer, so they were very versed in the old system. So yeah, maybe just some anecdotes or high-level ideas about what changed, what got better, how was it different?
So because the previous system was pad and paper and a DOS-based computer system, there was no aggregated data. There was no manageable data. There was no way to do a CSV upload into ProShop. So we were kind of forced to just do it mostly manually. And so the owner's daughter ended up staying on board, which I am forever grateful for. She obviously had not only had the history of the company, but is just an absolute rock star.
Yeah, she
And
is.
I just promoted her to our director of business development because she is just as great work. And so she and I, for the most part, just got it done. We just got all the part levels put into ProShop manually. We took as many as we could, and then that got to the point where as recurring work kept coming in, we would just update it before it hit the shop floor. And there was long hours working on the weekends just to get it done, and
Hmm.
it's all in there now. And
Right.
it was a lot of upfront work, but well worth it. It's just been amazing to have that fidelity at our fingertips through and through the shop right now.
Hmm. How did the team adapt to getting rid of paper travelers and just the way it had been done for decades?
Well, it's funny. I just feel very fortunate. There wasn't a lot of strong opposition. I would say there was a group that had been asking for it for years and years and were so excited to have it. And then there was a group who weren't really sure what to expect. And Dave, who's coming up on his 40 years with the company, I was most nervous about him.
Hmm.
I was sure he was going to have a hard time with it. Sure, he was going to, have some resistance to it, but he's done great. He asked great questions early on to help us refine some things, and he's obviously not as computer savvy as some of the 20-year-olds that we've recently hired, but
Hmm.
he's using it every day and managing. He's our mill lead, and he's managing the mill schedule and updating part levels, and he's getting all of his 40 years of knowledge into ProShop so that his successor has that information to the extent that you can. I mean, there's nothing you can do to
Sure.
replace that level of skill that he's developed, but everything that we can get out of his brain is now going into ProShop.
Is capturing that knowledge, was that one of the key? I mean, besides probably many other reasons, that was that one of the key things you knew you needed to do?
Oh
Because
yeah.
obviously, guys like Dave, if he's been there 40 years, he's probably getting fairly close to retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a risky place to be.
Yeah, and it's not just Dave. I mean, he's the quintessential example, right? But again, there's a lot of people who've been there for a long time, and the shop operated again like a lot of older shops do. And you're just where the fixture is, and you know what it looks like, and you know where to rummage to find tools, and that's a whole other topic we can talk about. And Dave would always find the tool, and if it wasn't the right tool, he knew what tool could be an appropriate alternative, and he would put that in, and no questions asked, right? And so, man, is it hard to bring new people into that environment without something like ProShop in place? And so we've seen that transition because we had to hire some new people early on. Like I said, we were 10 people short, and so trying to bring new people into a company that didn't have a lot of that organization, didn't have those systems in place. Oof, it was tricky. It was tricky. So it's
Sure.
it's a it's a whole lot easier now to bring somebody on, and we're still building it out. I mean, we are committed to using the breadth and depth of ProShop. We use it for all of our part levels are built. Obviously, we do our management review in there. We do our obviously our scheduling, shipping, receiving, purchasing. All that stuff goes through there. We're working on our getting our tooling module built out, and we're working on further developing the inspection IPC side of things.
Hmm.
And again, it's manual work because we don't have a lot of usable data that we could do a CSV upload on. So we're
Right.
trying to figure out the best way to execute and get that done efficiently. But yeah, we're building it out, and love the integration of all the modules.
Super cool. As you got training and got onboarded and really start to, see what was in there beyond what you'd seen in the sales demos, do you remember anything jumping out at you as like, holy smokes, this is just going to be a game changer from the way that we used to do things?
I mean, a schedule. I mean, so just a quick story. When I took over, again, we were 10 people short, and this was like the post-COVID whip was still in full swing, and our demand was through the roof. So this is what we looked like right when it was just the worst possible time to transition a company that didn't have anything else, just had that old system in place. It just was so difficult to hire people, for me to sort through the stacks and figure out where things were, to print out on the dot matrix printer the shippers. Then we get stuck in the printer, and there's a certain way you had to get the printer reset. and hold this lever up this way while you're pressing that down. I mean, it was a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. And I would have a customer saying, "Hey, can you give us an update on these 5 parts? When are they going to be done?" And so I would have to go out to the shop floor, figure out where the part was, and that's where the packet was. Look at the packet and see which operation we were on. And there was no times on them either, so I didn't know how long it's going to take for the next operation. So I'd have to research that. It would literally take me an entire day, a 10-hour day, to go through a list of 5 parts for our customer. And some of them are at outside process, but and say, okay, this is where they are, and this is when I think they're going to be done. And that's a total thing, right? Because you can't see, you know, we have a lot of complex parts that go through a lot of operations. I mean, we're not doing just like one aerospace part in a 5-axis machine. It's done. I mean, we have several parts that go to heat treat and then come back to heat treat machine operation, out to plate, come back for another machine operation. They're pretty complex and a lot of steps to them. And so, for me to even be able to say, I think this is when it gets done, assumes that, a guess of what's on the machine that's going to for the next operation, and how long is that going to be done? When is that
Sure.
part going to be done? So it was a nightmare. It was an absolute
Yeah.
nightmare. So the scheduling I mean, we see everything, right? We see everything that's coming through the shop, and we know where it is, when it needs to get done. And obviously with the work instructions, I say everyone knows what needs to get done, when it needs to get done, and how to do it now. So again, it's hard to pick just one, but if I pick just one element, it would have to be just to be able to see a schedule
Mhm.
is just huge. And I mean, and I've said it before, and you've talked about it. We were probably at 60 or 70% on time performance, and are at 98 plus regularly every month
Wow.
now.
That's huge. Did your customers notice and
Oh yeah,
mention that? Yeah. Can you
yeah,
share some of those conversations?
yeah. I mean, I was on regular weekly calls with our main customers, just to try to keep them informed of what was going on, where things were at. And it was really, really stressful for both sides. And now when we connect with them, I say, we briefly check in and say, how are things going? What do you need? And, occasionally things get behind or there's issues, but uh, generally it's a pretty short conversation, a check in, and that's it. I mean, we don't hear from, we don't hear from them much anymore. I mean, it was,
Yeah, that's a beautiful
yeah,
thing when you're not getting calls all the time.
yeah.
That's cool. And have they grown their business with you because of that? You know, they know you're a better vendor, and here's that's who we want to be sending our work to.
Yeah. Some of them have. Our biggest customer is too much of our business. It was the biggest risk going in. I've heard, on your podcast and every other area about customer concentration and industry diversification, and I knew that was a risk. There was a lot of but there was a lot of long-standing customers that have been with the company for decades, and so I kind of took that risk on when I took over, and we're working to fix that right now, and are actively making progress. We're growing new customers, truly new customers,
Hmm.
and expanding and fixing our customer concentration. It's not something we can flip the switch, but we are
Yeah.
well aware of the risks associated with that and are working to fix it.
Well, good for you. That is not something that every shop is as strategic about. I'll just say it
Yep.
that way. So, yeah, that's awesome. Were you guys ISO certified when you bought it already, or
We
did you
were.
did you put that in? Okay. Okay.
Yep. Yep. So that was
Yeah.
there was so it's not that it was void of any sort of system, obviously being an ISO shop, but it
Hmm.
was just very, very, very few people were involved with it, and it was essentially the owners that knew what it was all about and how it worked, but it was still all paperwork and and clunky. And we had so another little anecdote, so in 2023 we started with Pro Shop, getting our training in the beginning of 2023. We had to take a period where we had to push training out a little bit, so it extended longer than we wanted to. If it was on our part, just because we had to deal with some operational issues that needed our intense focus at the time. But we ended up launching to the shop floor in August of 2023, and we had our comprehensive ISO audit in October of
Oh, wow. Just 2 months
2023.
later. Yeah.
Yeah. And we had one or two, my memory serves me, like minor findings that we corrected that same day or the next day, and that was it. And then we just had our second ISO audit at the end of last year, and it went even better than the first year. So I mean, I couldn't. I was just we were. I said to the team, I got our leadership team together. I said, this is probably not going to go well. We just, I mean, we just launched ProShop and transitioning all this stuff to a new system, new leadership team. Like, they say, they say don't go into a company and make major changes, but I understand that philosophy, but there was major changes that were needed for this company to continue functionally and be positioned for success in the future. So we had to make some of those changes on the front end. And I was just bracing myself for a lot of post audit work, and we didn't have it.
That's cool. So you obviously had the objective evidence, the records of work orders in ProShop, only 2 months worth of records, really, I guess. But had you also moved your documentation into the system, or were you still working off the old documentation?
So it was kind of a blend at that point because we couldn't. I mean, we just couldn't get it all over. But yeah, we were using. I mean, one of the reasons we went with ProShop is because it's built for an audit, right? And so that was one of the selling points for us. So yeah, we did as much as we could to get our documents updated in ProShop, and then we would say we put some clauses in there like see, in development, or see old binder for this, and just kind of refer to this. So we had both. We kind of had to use both at that point.
Got it. Okay. That's a good strategy. I like that. That's often a fraught decision that people are making. They're like, hey, we really need to change systems and this or that, but we have an audit in 6 months. Is that enough time for us to get in place and, be able to pass that? Because we can't fail the audit. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate your perspective on that.
Yeah.
You mentioned, the auditability and the QMS maybe is one of your key factors, going back to your previous comments about, paring down to, 3 or 4 systems, and ProShop was an easy choice. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that? Besides maybe the QMS, other aspects that stood out for you?
Yeah, for us, there was a lot of things that were positive. And of course, you never know exactly how it's going to be until you're in it. But for us, just kind of overall, it seemed like it provided the best value for what we were looking for. And I say value being it was a reasonable price in the grand scheme of things. Not the cheapest, not the most expensive, but right there in the middle. But then you were able to see why. And so there were some of the softwares that were seemingly very, very user friendly and simple, and you could see that it would be easy for anybody on the shop floor to easily navigate that. But when we reached out to other companies to do our due diligence and say, well, what do you think about this software? They said it seemed really great until we needed to use it more. And then we kept creating all these workarounds and workarounds and workarounds until we're like essentially developing a different software, or needing to develop a different software. So
Right.
ProShop, I could see that we could have grow into it, and I knew where I wanted to take the company. And if I wanted to keep the company stagnant, I probably one of those other softwares would have been fine. I think we still would have had workarounds, but that's not where I wanted to take the company. I wanted to grow, and I don't view Blueprint Advanced Manufacturing as a machine shop. I view it as a company, as an organization that's going to grow and develop into a more mature company as time goes on. And it was very clear to me that ProShop was going to be able to grow with us as we got more mature, as we got more complex, as things got, as our needs enhanced with growth. So it was very obvious to me that this was a software that would work now, but also give us a chance to grow. And I love the HR components to be able to tie in trainings and tasks, and be able to, I grew up, my hospital administration side of things. There was, trainings, and everybody had to do annual trainings, and not only just from an administrative standpoint, but also from a technical standpoint. Had to make sure that people knew that they were doing and re-up their skills. And I saw that shop had that incorporated right into it where we wouldn't have to create something else from scratch.
Hmm.
And I did like that it was web based so that, as I'm traveling and doing other things for the company, I can still check in and, traveling out to California, I was able to check in and check on the schedule, see where things are at, reach out to my team and keep things moving forward.
That's good. Yeah. It's, were you surprised? Well, I guess maybe share the contrast in just like technology adoption in hospitals versus technology adoption in manufacturing. Because I keep hearing that, precision manufacturers for all the advanced things they do, they're like way behind other industries.
It was pretty striking to me to find that. And I'll go beyond just technology aspect of it because as you're aware, lean manufacturing developed out of the Toyota manufacturing system. When I started the company, I assumed that people were familiar with that concept, and there was only one person that knew what lean manufacturing was. And what was so interesting about that is I worked for it was a very, very large hospital system. It's the largest in the country and very well run, very lean. They operate a very lean company and are very efficient and intentional about everything that they do in the operations. And I lived in the lean environment every day. I mean, the
Hmm.
hospital was very well organized, and the whole thing had clearly adopted lean manufacturing, for decades, and that's
Hmm.
what I lived in. And it's funny, people really seem sometimes laugh when I say it came from the hospital side of things to manufacturing. But as crude as it may sound, it's very similar, right? So you're yep. Well, for one, you're getting people in the front door
Yep.
and you're treating them as efficiently and triaging them as efficiently as possible and getting them out the door as quickly as possible. Just like you're getting raw materials in the building, processing them, getting them out as quickly as possible on time and at high quality, right? You want to get in and out of the hospital. You don't want to spend any more time than you want to. And you want to make sure that the quality that you're receiving is the utmost
Yeah.
that it can be, right? And so quality was very, very embedded in every aspect of my world, just in a different way. So I'd gone through quality audits in different departments, and we did Gemba walks. They were called walk a mile instead of Gemba walks. So that they just everything that is lean manufacturing has been adopted by the hospital system, and I live that every day. And obviously, using technology was far more advanced than a lot of machine shops are nowadays. And so yeah, it seemed like that was an area that I could add value to the company, having
Hmm.
lived that experience just in a different setting. It's just taking those principles and applying them to the manufacturing setting, which is weird just because
Sure.
that's where it all
It
originated
came
from.
from. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. There's here in the Northwest, down closer to Seattle, there's a company called Cost Tailored, KASS, I think, and they make furniture. They make furniture for aerospace. They make furniture for department stores. But the founder, Jeff Koss, he is hardcore into lean. So much so that he spends most of his time giving lean tours of his company, right? And they've turned into, I think they now even charge for it, but we took our entire company back in the Pro CNC days down to Cost Tailored for a couple of different visits. And they had the whole setup. They're really dialed into giving these. But the biggest industry that would go to these tours was the hospital industry.
Mm.
So they were all into the lean manufacturing concept, removing waste, really looking at value added, what's valuable to the patients. And so it was cool to see that. And so, it totally validates what you're saying, that they're pretty progressive in that area, to a much greater degree than manufacturing, which is where lean came from. But hopefully we're catching up, as an industry. People like you are coming into these businesses and bringing those ideas. And
Yeah.
but yeah, it's cool. What, yeah, just a little bit of time left. Just maybe share with us one or two other, memorable experiences of owning your shop now for a few years. Anything at all that just stands out to you.
When I think back on the past couple of years, I mean, one really pivotal moment is the first month we hit 90 plus on-time performance, and
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously being able to see that continue. We've always had a really, really strong quality program. I ask our tooling reps who come in and out of shops all around our area, who can we go learn from? Who does this? Who does quality better than us? And they can't give me a good answer. There's one other company that's a little bit north of us that I hear, and that's pretty much it. I think we've got sounds like we have, and then seeing other shops that I visited in the area, it sounds like we've got a really, really strong quality program. So I think that was in place before, and that's thanks to Steve, our quality manager, who built out our quality program over the past 20 years, and it's amazing. But we really needed that on time delivery paired with that quality, right? And so when we were able to achieve those two things, it was just a really meaningful, and like I said, I'm a results driven person. Proven results, right? We were able to measure it before, measure it after, and that was just great encouragement for me and for everybody in the company to see that we're able to achieve that as a team. So that was big for us, and we absolutely, cheap plug for Pro Shop. We would not have been able to do it without Pro Shop. It was absolutely necessary to get there. Goes without saying, I think, but we are so appreciative for you. I mean, Amanda and I in particular rant and rave about Pro Shop all the time. And so that moment there, but also kind of more personally. I mean, we did 2 weekends where we kind of did some basic lean. We just cleaned everything out, cleaned out all the junk, and got dumpsters and multiple more dumpsters than I thought we needed. We had to order some more, and this started our tooling journey too. I mean, again, I come back and I think about tool cribs, and they make sense to me. It's similar to a stock room in a hospital. I mean, it's very organized. There's par levels. You scan stuff out. It automatically, sends a notification to a system that needs to be refilled, and so hopefully there's some tied in procurement process where it automatically drives that from the vendor. And so I'm trying to create that in our shop right now. And the first step of it was just cleaning everything out and then aggregating it in one area. And so we now have, a framework of a tool crib. But we spent multiple weekends cleaning out the shop, trying to get all this stuff organized, and that was rewarding in and of itself. But we did barbecues, and then we went up on top of the roof, and we're here, in Denver. And for those of you who are not from Denver, you look out to the west, and it's a beautiful view in the mountains. So you sit on top of this 2-story building on top of the roof. It's not a completely unobstructed view, but a beautiful view of the mountains. Just kind of we sat out there with chairs and just kind of reflected on the weekend, and I think bonded as a team through that experience. And so I don't think I'll ever forget, that moment, just feeling accomplished with what we had done with our hands, and organizing the shop that day, and then just taking the afternoon, evening time to sit up there, and sun's going down over the mountains, and just be able to enjoy that time together in a beautiful place.
That's super cool. So maybe my last question: if you had not decided to replace, the DOS system, can you even imagine what the shop would look like today if you were still trying to use that thing?
I probably wouldn't be married anymore because I would never be able to leave. I, I don't know. I just don't know how. I don't know how they did it. I just don't know. I can't even fathom. I can't even answer that question other than there's no way. There's no way. It was completely unmanageable to somebody who just wasn't in that space for 35 years and had their own system that nobody else knew how it operated. There's no way.
Right. Right. All right. Good answer. Well, from someone that is deeply passionate about this industry, I appreciate you bringing your skill set to the industry to help, this business that clearly had some good solid bones, but take it to the next level and grow it, because we need more folks, like you coming into this industry, buying these businesses that the owners are retiring, and upgrading them, upskilling them, hiring more people, and just strengthening our manufacturing base. It's so important, and hopefully you're falling in love with the industry too.
Yeah, I am, and I would like to add just one thing to that, just to kind of
Sure.
dovetail off of what you said. I mean, you mentioned that owners are retiring, and it really leaves customers. I think the old model of the machine shop really leaves customers in a tough spot, right? When they get to that point where owners are retiring, depending on the level of notice that they get, they're either scrambling, or even if they're not scrambling and the owners give them notice that, hey, we're out in a year, it still leaves them with more work. And so what we're trying to do is create a company that exists in perpetuity, not one that's I already have. There's succession plans for all of my leadership team. There's succession plans for me. There's insurance in place if something happens to me. There's a plan if something happens to me. And I really want to make sure, and I'm already grooming the next me, whoever that may be, right? I've got people in mind who are young and ambitious that we'll see it over time, but I'm already keeping an eye out for who that might be in the future. I don't plan on going anywhere. I want to be involved with the company, for the rest of my career. I love what I do. I love going to work every day. But when the time comes for me to move on, hopefully I can move into a board position and help, steward the company in that way. But I'm already thinking about, the plan for that. This company is not going to close down when I retire, or when, God forbid something happens to me. It's not going to be the end of it. So I think that is a different approach. That's obviously not just me, but there are other companies that, machine shops out there that are thinking that way too. And I think for customers to find companies like that, it's an insurance policy. It's something that's never going to go away. And
Yeah.
I think that when you ask, like, what makes us special, I think that is one thing that really does make us special. We I named the company Blueprint for a couple reasons. One, antiquated term, right? So it captures the history of the company. It's been around for 50 plus years. The advanced manufacturing is our forward, taking that history of the company and pairing it with our trajectory and our drive to to modernize and automate and align with the direction of the industry wherever it may go in the future, to add value for our customers, for our employees, for our community indefinitely. So I'm sorry, I just needed to add that because
Yeah.
that's
No, that's
really
great.
ties into the name of the company, and that's important to me and near and dear to my heart.
Hmm. Yeah, and obviously the word blueprint is used for the actual drawings to make the part, but it's also a term used for a blueprint for how to do something, right? How to uh, build, yeah, almost a repeatable process, right? Which sounds like you're building, including with leadership and with, yeah, the long term sustainability of a business, which I think is super important.
It's a plan, right? A blueprint's a plan. I'm a planner. Everybody knows me.
Yeah.
My employees call me OCD and laugh at me and a lot of things that I want to do with the company because it's very planned, it's very organized. That's a blueprint, but we're always, ready to make a revision
Hmm.
and pivot when we need to pivot. We're ready for that. So really, it really does encapsulate who we are as a company, where we came from, and where we're going, all in one name. And that's really why we named it Blueprint Advanced Manufacturing.
Cool. You said it way better than I did. So that is awesome. So if people want to reach out to you, learn more about Blueprint, where would you suggest they go to find out?
Yeah, pop on our website, blueprintadvancedmfg.com, or
Okay.
feel free to give us a call or give me a call anytime. Happy to chat.
Blueprint Advanced MFG. Awesome. We'll make sure we're linking to that. But Ben, thank you for sharing your wisdom. Again, thank you for joining the industry. It's great to have you here. Glad to see you bringing such wisdom and guide leadership and just what people need to be inspired to do, whether they've been in the industry a long time or they're new to it as well. So thanks for sharing with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for everything you and your team does, Paul. I can't say it enough. We're so appreciative of Pro Shop. Keep doing what you're doing, and we just humbly thank you for everything you guys do.
No, I'll pass that along. Thank you so much, Ben. Appreciate it.
Thanks.